Hi, I'm Eric Lubau, and welcome to Beyond the Belt. This is a conversation with Paris Lee, a black belt out of Howell, New Jersey, USA. Paris is an immigration lawyer in the US. His practice focuses on families, but he also personally supports a lot of BJJ athletes with their American immigration needs. I hope you enjoy our chat.
Hey, Paris, thanks for being here.
Thank you very much, Eric. I appreciate the opportunity.
Great. Tell me what it was like for you to get your black belt.
Black belt. I'm sure. I mean, everyone. It's very special, obviously, for anyone who's reached that level. Um, like most people, I cried during my ceremony, because it's the culmination of all this hard work, going through all these injuries and um, doubt and feeling like giving up. And when you finally get to that point, it's just like when your professor recognizes you, and it's just validation to yourself too that you actually made it to that point. Not that it's the end. It's actually, as most people know, it's actually the beginning. But you reach that point that you set in your mind when you first started the art.
Was it tears of joy or was it tears of relief or was it just emotional overwhelm?
It's a combination. It's hard to describe. It's you just get overwhelmed. And like for me, well, actually did I had a feeling I was going to get it, but so I because I felt like I might get it. I wanted to have some remarks kind of prepared in advance. But when it actually happens, you're still in a moment of disbelief, and it there's just all this flood of emotions, and even though you have all this these words prepared, it just goes out the window.
What'd you end up saying though?
Well, I wanted to, of course, acknowledge my professors, like my professor Hollis Gracie, Hensler's cousin. But I also wanted to inspire the lower ranks, the colored belts, and kind of give them an idea not to what I went through, and not to give up, because like myself, I'm only 135 pounds. I'm not a young guy, so I wanted to let those people know that they're on the right track, and not to get discouraged when they encounter certain injuries, or they feel like they're reaching a plateau. Not to give up, but to keep at it.
Did you get that out
Because
though?
because if I could do it, then if I could do it, anybody could do it. You know, that's
I
how I
love
felt.
hearing that. I love hearing that because everybody feels like that. Everybody's like, well, if I could do it, anyone could do it. And I think that's
Yes.
fascinating because no one looks at the person saying that and thinks, well, you're just anybody. Like they look at it as like, oh, this is a person who did that. So of course they're saying that.
Well, I just feel like, because when I started jujitsu, I wasn't. I started relatively late. Um,
What does that mean? What
like
does relatively late mean?
I don't remember how old I was. Actually, I'm sorry. I started in 2006, so I'm 52 right now. I don't know. I don't remember. I'm not good at math.
Okay.
Um, yeah, I started. I had a baby on the way. But like most people, most people who do jujitsu, if you're not a young kid and not an athletic person, you're just like, you have a family, you have a regular job. Um, so you have all these competing interests, besides jujitsu. And even though jujitsu, you fall in love with the art, and it becomes your passion, almost like a mistress in a way. You still have to take care of the other parts of your life so that you can do jujitsu. When I was not in a position where I could just not work and just train all day for 6 days a week. So
What got you
I
into jujitsu in your 30s though? Like that's not something that people always do, especially not in 2006.
yeah I was I was working out. I've been working out, lifting for, since high school, but it got to a point where it just started getting very monotonous. And of course, I tried to change it up and change my soundtracks and everything. But again, it got to a point where it just became very routine, and um, I wasn't. I still felt like a void in my life. Um, I was kind of happy. I was happy with my profession, where I was headed in terms of my law, but I still felt that I was missing that type of that personal excitement. Everyone needs something for themselves, and to me, lifting was that for a while, but then I kind of lost my love for it, and then my brother-in-law at the time, he was into martial arts. Um, so he was talking about Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, and it kind of intrigued me how like this skinny guy, skinny Brazilian guy, was beating up all these bigger people. And also, I also felt in the back of my head that, not that I was looking to get into any fights or altercations, but I never truly felt secure that if I got into a fight with somebody, that I would actually be able to defend myself. Um, so I just started looking into it. I don't know. I just, that void, that feeling of insecurity, and that void of something was missing. I just started looking into it, and then I took my first class with this. He's no longer with us, but this guy, Mike Merkulik. You were from New Jersey, right?
Yeah, I know.
Originally, yeah. So Mike,
I never met Mike, but I know who he is.
yeah. So he was a great guy. He was very skinny, very slender, but so technical. So I took my first class with him, and then I just kept going. And then from there, I was taking jujitsu, and I was also looking into other arts too. I was looking into Jeet Kune Do, couple other different arts. I actually joined two schools at one time, jujitsu and another school. But the other school was just the other art was just, there's nothing like jujitsu. It was too formal, and it's not like jujitsu where you could just talk to the other people and just it's not the same. You know,
Yeah,
nothing's like jujitsu. You know.
I agree. I know a bunch of people who like did Jeet Kune Do and like stuck with it, and uh, I don't get that sense from them, from anybody I've talked to who does that more long term, that fulfillment is there, because you can do a lot with it. You get great hand speed, great hand eye coordination, usually also good footwork, but it's not a complete thing, a complete body thing in my experience, in the same way that jujitsu is.
Yeah, and also I mean, I'm not trying to put down any other arts or anything, but
Yeah.
just the way that you relate to the people is it was just too formal for me. I really was dealing with enough formality as a lawyer, dealing with judges and everything. I'm not looking for, I don't need any extra formality. I'm looking for a place where I can go and relax and have fun. And sometimes that type of environment is not as conducive the way that it can be with jujitsu, where, yeah, of course, you have your professor, you have your instructor, but there's still a little bit more informality. You can still be yourself more.
Did you figure out what that thing was that you were looking for? Like you said, there was something missing. Like, what was that thing?
That thing was jujitsu.
Right. Yeah.
That thing was
Okay.
just.
But I meant like, what did jujitsu fill in your life? Like, what was that? Is it community? Is it purpose? Is it passion? Like, what, what was it that it fulfilled for you?
It's everything. And that's why jujitsu, short of uh short of my relationship with God, with Jesus Christ, and my family, it's my passion.
Yeah.
Because it feels so, it fits so many things. It's obviously it's great exercise, so you feel the endorphins from the exercise, but it also engages your mind so much, because you're not just doing mechanical rote movements. You're employing strategy. You're also helps to develop your spirit too, because you're also, besides your mind and employing strategy and tricks and things like that, you're also learning about resilience and fortitude, and putting yourself in uncomfortable situations, and learning how to bear under pressure and under trying circumstances. So it meets everything. When you're not hurt, it's awesome. It's the best thing for you.
You said
Of course,
hurt and
of course.
injuries. You said
Yes.
hurt and injuries a few times. Does that mean you've had a bunch of like pretty bad injuries?
Well, I wouldn't say catastrophic. I mean, people have gone through worse than me, so I don't want to be like the crybaby. But I did tear my bicep when I was I think between purple belt and brown belt, and that was pretty bad, because uh, obviously it prevented me from training as hard as I wanted to. It's actually a good thing though, because it actually taught me to train more carefully. But I never got it fixed surgically. So I still have a torn bicep, but I think that was probably my worst injury. But in retrospect, if I could train differently, I think I could have avoided that, but it is what it is. And I think that's part of the reason why I cried probably too when I got my black belt because I went through that, because I went through certain injuries and I didn't give up. But it's very hard to for almost for most black belts or and all black belts, we all have to go through this trial period, and you can't help but cry when you've overcome those things.
It makes complete sense to me. When you said you didn't get your bicep fixed, did that mean that you trained through it? Like you continued to, or did you take time off and sat on the side of the mat? Like, how did you handle that?
Um, I probably took about 2 months off. Um, but I probably took about 2 months off, and then it got to a point where I was able to still move around. So, and I'm still training with the torn bicep, but obviously, I'm very careful. Um, but I think it was about 2 months I took off.
Why didn't you get it fixed? Like, what was that thought process?
I think that's just there's just a sick part of me because I was just so obsessed with the art, and I didn't want to take time away because you always hear about when you get surgery done, um, people are gone for months at a time between getting the surgery done and then the post surgery, and it takes so long for you to just get back to where you were before if you have a successful surgery. Um, And I still see that today. I see a lot of my friends, they go through surgery and it takes very long time to get back, and they're still not the same as what the surgeon promised. So for me, I would only get surgery if it's absolutely necessary. If I can still move around and function, I'm going to find a way to work around my injury.
That's
So
that's
that's
so
kind of what I
crazy
did.
to hear. Like I couldn't imagine like not getting a surgery to fix the torn bicep, even if you don't get back. Like what does that mean now? Like what kind of limitations do you have now with a torn bicep that probably didn't heal
So
correctly?
I mean, it's my right my right bicep
Yeah.
because I'm right-handed. So that's my power hand. So I have to, of course, I can't go crazy like when I'm pulling off chokes and things like that. I just have to be aware, and that's the good thing about jujitsu is you have more body awareness. At least now, I've gotten to a point where I have very good body awareness, so I can kind of sense where I'm redlining it, and I need to push back. But it also forces me to be more technical. So I don't try to use brute strength. I have to use different ways to outwit and submit my opponent.
Didn't you have to do that anyway as like a 135-pound guy?
Yes, but even though I was lighter, when you start off, I mean, you still you have to. It takes time to get that mentality. So even though you're smaller, you still try to muscle it, you know, as much as you can, because it's a mentality that has to be instilled in you, whether you learn it because you're smart enough to learn from the beginning, you have a very good instructor who can teach you, or you have to learn through experience. So,
I got yeah. I
but
mean,
yeah,
I'm
I,
not a
I
small person, so like, do you have any
mhm.
advice for small people, like somebody who's just getting into it or a white belt? Like, what do you wish you had known as a white belt that you could give as like advice to a person who's a bit smaller?
Well, there's a lot of sayings or truisms that are true. Like you can't compare yourself to other people. That's so true. You can't compare yourself to other people. You do have your own journey. Everybody has their own journey, but you have to focus more on. And I tell this whether you're a white belt or even a lot of my friends are they're color belts, but when they ask me, I do tell them that it's very important. You have to take time to understand the art. It's not about just submitting your opponent. You really have to. When you understand things, then everything will start coming naturally. Because when you understand it, then your body internalizes it, and then you're not thinking when you're rolling. Everything just comes like automatic. Like when I roll, it's everything is automatic. I'm not thinking about what I'm trying to do. Like everything's on autopilot.
Can you give me like an example of what you think about when you say understanding? Like not just autopilot, but like what's an example of that
Yes.
for you?
Well, understanding in the sense like you have to understand when somebody teaches you a move, you have to. It's not just you just replicating the move. You have to understand why they're trying to why you're maneuvering your body in a certain way, um, so that if you truly understand it and your partner maybe moves a little bit of a different way, you because you understand the principle, you still understand how to make the adjustments. But if you're just mimicking what your instructor is telling you without understanding it, then when your partner makes a sudden adjustment a different way, you're not going to know how to react, or it's not going to work the same way. So I guess what I'm saying is that just understanding the principles why certain things are why certain moves are effective, what you're trying to, and also what you're trying to accomplish, whether you're on top or whether you're on bottom. It's not um, about necessarily employing a specific technique. It's about, what are you trying to control the posture? Are you trying to pin the guy? Then the submissions will come later because once you achieve that objective, whether it's controlling the posture or pinning the person so that he can't bridge, then the submissions just they come about organically rather than you
That's
trying to force something.
that's so interesting that you talk about it like that because I don't think I would have had the ability to understand what someone's showing me probably until like purple belt. Like
Uh-huh.
at blue belt, like maybe, but with like a couple of very specific moves just because I came from wrestling. But understanding the things is really hard because you need a whole framework of things to understand it. You need to know like why posture is important, what frames or posts are doing, and when to use your head or your elbow versus your hand. And it's like all of those things that require understanding. That's a really
Absolutely,
hard suite of concepts to get people to know without a lot
it
of
is.
intrinsic like internal physical understanding.
It is. You have to kind of set aside, and that's where you have to kind of that's why jujitsu helps to build humility too, because you do have to set aside your own notions of how things should be, and you really have to listen to your instructor when they emphasize certain things, and you have to and you have to be willing to tap. You cannot learn if you don't tap. You could only learn certain things. You have to learn by putting yourself in a bad position, understanding what it feels like to get to that point, and tap so that you can learn. Understand those things.
Yeah.
Like it took me when I was a white belt for almost I think for almost 3 years because I couldn't do the armbar for the longest time. I couldn't like so it took me a long time. But then once I started understanding things, then everything kind of clicked, and then like I got my black belt in 7 years. So like 4 years later, after the white belt, everything just started clicking.
That's great. It's great when it just clicks. I just think it's
Yeah.
so interesting to try to think about what that moment was for you and for you for anybody and for you that's like the armbar, right?
Well, the click when things started coming
Yeah.
together. Um, I mean, I think things start coming together when you learn a certain move, and then you see it from different scenarios. Um, and when you can start creating things, like you'll learn your basic uh, Kimura, but then you'll be able to see it from different positions. Whether it's from the back or whether it's from a crucifix position, and you can just everything you'll see it in all these different permutations.
Yeah. I was teaching a class a couple of weeks ago and I was just doing shin to shin, a single leg X and then sweeping and then into an ankle lock. And about 3/4 of the way through the class, somebody walked over to me and was like, "Hey coach, isn't this just the single leg X, but on the ground?" And I was like,
Yeah,
"Yeah, you got it."
yeah,
And he was like,
exactly.
he turned around. He was so happy that he figured that out. And I was like,
Yes,
"Wow,
yes,
you
yeah,
really, you understand this position now."
exactly. Yes, yeah, yeah. That's kind of what I'm talking about. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And it's so hard to get people to kind of understand that. Like one of the ways that I like to do that is with the cross collar choke, and I just show it from like 5 different positions, and then I'm like, look, this
Hmm.
is all the same. It's all the same
Yes,
mechanics. It's just this way
yes,
I have gravity on my side, this way I'm pulling down, this way I'm leaning into it on one side, this way my
yes,
leg is doing more work, and everybody's like, oh, those don't look the same, and I'm like, I promise you, they're all the same.
exactly. Yeah. And then sometimes like when you haven't seen it before, but it just comes organically, where you are able to apply it in a different position, then you feel like now you're really starting to. I mean, of course, no one's going to be to the point where they understand everything, but your knowledge is getting deeper when you can
Yeah.
see certain things in different situations.
It's yeah, it's like a wonderful transition. I find that's like when I see people starting to get it and then they're like, coach, what about? And then I'm like, yes, you now see this. Good. I'm gonna go
Yes,
help somebody who needs a little bit more help than you who now
yes,
understood that these two things are exactly the same.
yes, yes, yes. Um, so yeah, I guess that's kind of what I'm trying to say. Yeah.
I, I think all of these things, like whether it's helping people understand this or like finding out that it was good for you to make that leap, like that to me is pulling something very beautiful about jujitsu of like putting together information, building confidence in yourself, building confidence in your body, building confidence in the notion that you can put these two things together. Like that, we talked about what the purpose was like for you. And one of my favorite things is like watching people who don't have confidence in their body or their own capabilities pull something off and then be like, oh, I did it.
Yeah,
I did it.
yeah,
Right.
because it's so empowering, you
Yeah.
know? And that's why jujitsu is great because, if you go to the right environment, other people can help you to, if you have the right environment, then you can get to that point.
Yeah.
Or if you have good partners and patient partners and people who are not trying to hurt you and everyone's trying to improve and everyone's on the same page, then you can get to that point where you can, um, your partners and of course yourself, but your partners will help you to achieve that.
Yeah.
That's why jiu-jitsu is so great because it's more than it surpasses being a sport or a self-defense. I really love the art aspect of it because it's an art too. Eh,
You work with like you work professionally, like that's the BJJ visa lawyer setup. You work professionally with
Yes.
a lot of people. Yeah, exactly. With a lot of people who do jujitsu. Do you get to train with them as well and really get to like you do the professional thing and you're also like, well, now come on, can we roll? Do you ever get to do that or is that not?
Yes, I do. I try. Um, because that's, I guess like a secret motivation is I want to bring these people over to the States because they have so much talent. But of course, if I'm so close, if the talent is in the United States, there's no excuse why if they're so close, there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to, even if you have to get on a plane, but you gotta go. You gotta go. You gotta train with the best to learn. You gotta it's like when in law you have to take continuing legal education classes to stay current. And with jiu-jitsu, because it evolves so fast and there are um so many innovative techniques, and people are finding different ways of doing things that are more effective and efficient. Like I love it so much. I want to learn. I want to learn everything. So uh, through my profession, I've had the unique opportunity. I mean, probably short of like Michael Zenga from BJJ Fanatics. I really feel like I've trained with a lot of people. I've learned from so many talented people.
And I think that's something that's beautifully unique about BJJ is that, even if you're helping like basketball players get in the country or hockey players, like you're not going to go play with them all. But in jujitsu, you're like, no, this is like kind of not equal footing in the same sense of like same skill level all the time, but
Yes, yes,
everyone's willing to just train with everyone else.
absolutely. Yeah, and then they. Um, whatever techniques they have, I mean, you could apply to your own game. It's unlike anything else. Like, and these are people who are when you think of these people, like these are like the best people in the world. They're at the top of the sport, but a lot of these people are just incredibly humble. Um, just really genuine people, and they have their own fears and like they've already achieved the pinnacle where they've rose to the top of the podium and they've won, ADCC and worlds, but people don't realize like what other struggles that they have to negotiate and deal with because they're not citizens, right? And
Do you
so
have
they
any
have
like
to deal with the
particularly?
immigration.
Yeah, I do want to talk about immigration, but do you have any like particularly memorable conversations with any of the people that you've worked with? You don't have to say their name if there's like a confidentiality thing or something, but I'm just any particularly memorable conversations with any athletes about?
Memorable. It's not. I honestly no, not conversations in and of themselves, but just my interactions with them and just my experiences with them. Not particularly like one conversation, but just like a lot of them. A lot of them, they're just so humble, just so humble. Like you would think people with so much God, that God has gifted them with so much talent. You would think some people, maybe in like other arts or other professions, like people can become arrogant, but a lot of these people, like uh, Theon, Adele, Luke, they're so humble. Like it's just really good people, and they're very like all my clients. So like they're very they understand like because they have to go through all these struggles and deal with the immigration system. And they're very level headed too,
Yeah.
very level headed, and you have to be because especially with immigration, I mean, you have to listen to people who know uh, the rules and the regulations. You have to be willing to listen to them to handle this properly.
How did you get
So
into immigration with athletes? I mean, obviously you're an immigration lawyer, so you clearly
yeah,
started with immigration, but like, how did you get to the athlete side of it specifically?
I think I mean I actually was doing a lot of the athlete visas a long time ago when I first started. I think people just when they found that I was an attorney, they just started asking questions. And because when I first started, I was doing immigration, but not necessarily athlete that athlete type of visas. I started looking into it, and it's a very niche field. So once you start looking into it, once you start doing a couple cases, you start building some experience with it. I did it more than 10 years ago, but I guess like with immigration, I'm not with life, like everything is about timing. So I did some cases and I was successful with those cases. Um, but then immigration started getting harder and kind of like it is right now, but immigration started getting harder and imposing, more strict regulations. So that part of the practice just kind of like went dormant for many, many years. Um, and then I would say about 3 to 4 years ago, then it just started coming back. And then, one client lead, I do my best for, my clients, like I'm 24/7 available. And if I take a case, like there's a lot of cases that I reject because I don't feel like the person necessarily qualifies, even though he or she might think that he or she qualifies. But I give my honest assessment because I know, fortunately, because I know jujitsu and I know how immigration is. I know who's going to qualify, who's not going to qualify, and it's more important for me to be honest. And if you don't have the case, I'm not going to take your money. But if I do take the case, like I'm gonna pour myself into it. I'm gonna do everything I possibly can to get the case approved.
What are some examples of like it not like cases where you're like, oh, this won't work? Or like what are like some not people's names, but like what are some red
Yeah.
flags or problematic things?
Well, I mean, just because people compete a lot and they might do smaller promotions, I mean, as jujitsu practitioners, we recognize like how prestigious some of these things are at maybe not at the highest level, but even at the a little bit lower. It's they're very good accomplishments, but the problem is that with immigration, the adjudicators they don't do jujitsu. They don't know anything about jujitsu. So sometimes it's actually more pressure when I have high profile cases because every I know and you know and they know that they should qualify, but the problem is you have to convince somebody who doesn't know anything about jujitsu that they are at the top of the field. Some of these
So
people like
just just for definition's sake, because I want to make sure I understand this. When you say
Mhm.
qualify means like to be able to be proven at the top of your field or to be exceptional in your field. Like what does qualify mean there?
So yeah, so it depends what type of visa you're applying for. But if you're applying for a P visa, you got to show that you're internationally recognized athlete and you have some level of skill that's beyond your average competitor. Um, if you're applying for like an O visa or you're applying for a green card, then the standard is even higher. Then you got to show that you are extraordinary in grappling or jujitsu. So um, the way that immigration looks at things, they look at, well, what type of competitions are you engaging in? Do they require international competition? And then what's the how prestigious are these events that you're participating in? But the problem is, again, going back to whoever's reviewing the case, if the guy doesn't understand, like ADC is the gold standard or the IBJJF world or is the gold standard, then it's not going to mean anything. So you have to you have to educate the adjudicator about these things. And
How do you go
sometimes
about doing that though?
it's very yeah. Now you have to educate them by getting the right people to explain. In our sport, this is recognized as the pinnacle of the sport. Like this is the highest level of competition, and sometimes that means getting finding the right people uh, to 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 uh, to write that down. Also, like with immigration, like some of these sports cases, like if you're applying for an O visa or an EB-1 for a green card, one of the criteria that you can show is that you made an original contribution uh, to the sport. So you have to understand the sport, obviously. So you can say, well, okay, like this guy, he developed the high body lock. And then you have to be able to explain it to the officer, and you have to find people who also can certify. Yes, this is like a new technique that people are using now. It's working at the highest levels. It's not your traditional low body lock. It's more immobilizing the upper body to get your way around the legs. Um, so it's very challenging. It's fun at the same time, but it's challenging too. It's these cases are a lot of pressure.
Wait, so to certify it, is that like similar to like a character witness? Like, are you
Yes.
bringing in like an internal expert? Are you allowed to act
Yes.
as that expert actually?
No, no, because I'm the attorney, so I have to find other people to act as to give their expert opinions.
Interesting. So, are you ever brought in to give an expert opinion, given that you are, a black belt in jujitsu?
I haven't no, I haven't been asked. I mean, I probably wouldn't qualify. People who would be experts are people like for what I'm doing for these sports cases, they're definitely going to be not people like me, but people who are competitors, recognized competitors who won at the highest levels, or people who are involved with the jujitsu media, like the jiu-jitsu journalists or even commentators or event promoters. They would be more qualified as experts because they're more they're more in line with the competitive aspect of the sport.
Okay, I just was, I guess, curious how they were defining expert because in all practicality, a black belt is an expert. You know,
In a way,
that's
yes, in a
in a
way,
way
yeah,
like doesn't mean you're an expert on everything, but neither is the
correct,
journalist or the promoter. So
correct. That's true, true. But I think I think because they just have a little bit uh more of a presence in that world. But if you're a journalist, you're always talking, covering events. So if you're a commentator, you're going to the events, so you're seeing up close some of these competitors. They probably have a little bit more credibility to serve as an expert.
Is there anything that you kind of wish worked differently about this? I mean, you've been doing this now for what, 20, 30 years. Like, is
30,
there
yeah,
anything
almost
that,
close to 30 years, yeah.
yeah, is there anything that you wished worked differently about this particular style of immigration?
About the
Yeah,
sports
just the
part of it?
sports, because obviously there's a lot of issues with the way immigration is happening right now in the United States. But
Yes. Yeah. Um, that's very hard to answer. Um, it's just that I wish that and it's not immigration's fault, I guess, but I just wish like some of the officers were a little bit more educated about the sport. But I guess that's part of my job is to educate them about the sport. But I just think that eh, I wish I wish that I think that some of the decisions are they come as a result of the environment because of the climate. So if you have like a more sometimes a little bit more liberal administration, then people are a little bit more reasonable when they're reviewing cases. But if you have a very conservative administration, um, then the standards are sometimes they get higher, higher than they're supposed to get.
that,
So I wish they
I,
would just do their job. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
Like instead of applying like a ultra high standard that's beyond what they're supposed to be requiring, they're asking immigration is asking for things that they're not supposed to be asking for. They're expecting things that we don't necessarily have to prove if we've already proven a certain level.
can you give me some examples of like what they're asking for that they shouldn't be asking for?
Well, for example, again, they for example, they might be asking for proof that some proof that an event is requires internationally recognized competitors. That that is not necessarily. I don't. I had to review the regulations, but it's not necessarily a strict requirement. Whether it's that or something else, like they're imposing what they call ultra virus requirements beyond what the strict language of the statute says. And sometimes like you have to actually litigate it to get them to reverse their decisions, which is another headache going through litigation where you have to like sue immigration in federal court, which I don't do. Fortunately, most of my cases they get approved, so I don't have to get to that point. But a lot of my colleagues are going through that experience where immigration is making wrong decisions, but unless you take it to the next level, there's nothing you could do about
Yeah, I
it.
can imagine that's incredibly frustrating. Is there any like positive policy shifts that are happening these days that like you're happy about or excited about? Or
No.
okay,
No.
fair enough.
I mean, yeah, right now it's just immigration is just so tough, right? I mean, I understand. Not that I want to get overly political. I
Yeah,
understand. I understand where the administration is going. Obviously, no one's supporting illegal immigration. I'm an attorney. I do legal immigration, so no one's supporting illegal immigration. Nobody's supporting fraud. Um, but I just think that because the administration is trying to go after so much fraud and reduce illegal immigration, it's the approach is like so heavy-handed that a lot of innocent people are also getting affected by it.
yeah, it's a bit of a gross overcorrection
Yeah.
back in the other direction.
Yes.
So, I mean, you deal mostly in P O and P visas.
Hmm.
Is there like structurally different value placed on that as opposed to like an H-1B, for example? Because an H-1, actually, just really quick, like, can you give a definition of H-1B, an O, and a P? Because I think it'll help disambiguate some of the questions.
Yeah, sure. So, like the O visa is for people who are extraordinary, like in our context, extraordinary in jujitsu. So it allows the person to come to the United States to work and stay and get paid for 3 years. If they're going to be continuing their expertise in jujitsu, whether it's going to be as a competitor or as a teacher, um, That's pretty much what the O visa is for. The P visa is a little bit of a lower standard. So instead of having to show that you're extraordinary, you got to show that you're exceptional in jiu-jitsu, that you are internationally recognized, that you have been competing internationally, and you are going to be competing. But you're only allowed to just compete in the United States, not to teach. But the P visa is for 5 years. The H-1B is for specialty occupations, not so much for jiu-jitsu. It's more for like, I mean, you've done some, so like computer
Yeah.
professionals and specialty occupations where you have a college degree and the job requires that college degree.
Yeah.
I don't know if you heard of the latest news that President Trump signed a directive where people are going to have to pay $100,000
Well,
if you
so
want to
my
sponsor
understanding
somebody's.
is this: if it's if you starting, I forget the exact date, maybe September 21st, if
Yes.
you don't have if you have an H-1B and you're in the country, you're fine, but you're not allowed to leave the country. But if you are outside of the country on September 21st, you're not allowed back in unless you pay 100,000.
Yeah,
Which is,
I've heard that too. I don't know if that's entirely accurate, but from what I understand, like the employer, the applicant, well, the employer would be the applicant. The employer is going to be required to pay $100,000 annually to have H1 to be able to sponsor an H1B,
wow,
and that's going
that
to
makes it
affect a
very
lot of
expensive.
people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Oh
there's
no.
what, 10,
So
10 to 12,000 of those a year or something like that given out.
H1Bs, there's 65,000 per year, which is not a lot for
Yeah.
H1Bs. And then I think an extra 20,000 for different professions, but generally speaking, like 65,000. But if the order doesn't get blocked, then that's going to affect a lot of people because a lot of smaller companies are not going to be able to afford that.
Yeah, no, and they're gonna forget affording it. They're also not going to be able to. They're going to lose institutional knowledge. They're going to lose capabilities. All of a sudden, they'll have to be like a hiring spree, which there won't be enough qualified people for. A lot
Exactly.
of
Yeah.
companies are going to go out of business on top of that, just not being able to support their current operations.
Yeah. So that's the latest news, but that I think that's going to have a ripple effect. It's going to affect a lot of people if it goes through.
Yeah,
But
and I know H-1Bs are generally focused on more in tech, more on specialized skills, but also they're on like permanent employment, so to speak. Um, and it sounds like by your description, the P and the O are mostly focused on temporary or freelance kind of employment.
so the OMPs are temporary visas. They're non-immigrant visas. The H-1B also is a non-immigrant visa, meaning that they're intended for people who are not intending on staying here permanently. Versus if you do a green card application, like an EB-1, employment-based one application, or EB-2, employment-based two application, those are green card. Those are permanent resident applications where the applicant is going to be has an intention of living here permanently. So for those applications, of course, the standard is going to be higher because now it's to stay here permanently versus like the O visa or P visa, the United States is allowing you to stay here temporarily to to um to ply your craft.
Okay. I mean, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But like along those lines, I'm curious how it works for people because we're talking about basically individual athletes, right? Like jujitsu for the most part is an individual sports, just like
Yes.
MMA or whatever. But you often come with coaches. Like, what does that look like for people who are trying to come with their coaches? Like, the coaches are probably not eligible for like O or P visas. Maybe they are, maybe they're not. But
The
how does
coaches
that
are
work?
eligible. Yeah, the coaches are eligible. They have to apply for like a separate visa as a personnel type of support visa, but they can. Coaches can come if they want to accompany the athlete. They can apply for like a support personnel visa, or they just might come for a visit on visitors visas and just happen to coach the athlete during the event. But obviously, they're not going to stay. They're just coming as a visitor. They're not getting paid or anything, and then they're just supporting their athlete, coaching, but then they're going to leave. But if they want to stay here for a longer period of time, they have to apply for like a support personnel type of visa.
Is that is that P and O also, or is that a different class of visa?
That's like, for example, the P, I think it's like P1S or something. I don't remember the term. I forget the exact terminology, but I know, for example, for like a P visa, you can have a support coach with you.
I mean, you just said like not get paid, but what if
Hmm.
you are there as a coach to get paid? Do you
Well, if
then
you're
have
there,
a different kind of visa?
if you're there to get paid, then you would have to apply for an official visa, like the support personnel type of visa, um, because without the proper visa, generally speaking, you can't come here and work without authorization. So if you're coming here on a visitor's visa, but you are getting paid or receiving some sort of remuneration, then yeah, then you are violating the
No,
provisions
I
of
get
this
that.
day.
What I'm
Yeah.
asking is like, so you're a coach, and so you're not the exceptional athlete, right? You are a support for the exceptional athlete, but you also get
Yes.
paid because the exceptional athlete needs the
Needs you.
coaching. Yeah.
Yes.
So
Hmm.
do you do all like kind of that package work as well? Like, okay, I'm going to help the exceptional athlete and the coaching staff that comes in support of this person.
I haven't done support staff, honestly. Not recently. Most of my cases are just athletes coming in.
Okay. It
Yeah.
was just curiosity because I was thinking about like, sometimes athletes have like not only do they have coaches, but then sometimes they'll have like sponsorships or media appearances. And then sometimes the coaches will come along and they'll be supporting them. And it's like, you can't have somebody on set for media appearances without like insurance support and legality. And like, so I was just curious how that worked, but it sounds like it's
Yeah, yeah,
just
yeah,
a,
yeah. Yeah, I mean, again, for the most part, because the coaches they're just coming just for the event, just for the weekend. Like they're not. It might be more trouble than it's worth to actually apply for the visa. If they're just staying for the weekend, so most just come just for the event. But yes, if they wanted to stay longer and um, actually get paid and stay here with permission, they need to apply for that support personnel type of visa.
you have all of these people, like I assume that help you with this at your firm, but you're like I mean, not that this is a negative way of phrasing it, but it's like a mom and pop shop, right? Like how big is
Yeah.
is your firm?
So so my firm is myself, my partner who's my wife, and then I have two paralegals and one assistant, and I have two attorneys who are of counsel. But for for jujitsu, I do everything
The,
because these are my
purely
babies.
passion. Yeah, okay, that's
Yeah,
what I was asking.
these are passion, these are passion projects, and um I do. I don't know. I feel more responsibility for my jujitsu brothers and sisters, so I do everything. I oversee everything. Because again, also like with the cases, like you have to have a knowledge to be able to do this properly. You have to know jujitsu. And my staff, they don't know jiu-jitsu. They just see me run. They just think I'm just wrestling and sweating with people, but they don't, and it's not their fault. But they don't know jiu-jitsu, so um, I only trust myself to do those cases.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I was just, I
Yeah,
mean, part of why I was leading into is you do this and you run a business on top of that. You run a small business and you've got like a family. Like there's a lot that goes on. There's a huge time commitment in that. And
well, yeah, yeah, definitely. Like my because like even though um like I am the BJJ visa lawyer, but that's not the primary part of my practice. That's not how I pay for my kids' college. I mean, I do immigration, but my primary concentration is citizenship and family cases, marriage cases. Like those are the bulk of my cases. So these cases I do on my own time on the side. So I don't do. I try not to do like heavy volume because I need to devote enough time to each case. And because these cases they deserve and they require like your intense concentration. And you can't there's only so many hours in a day. So I don't take a lot of cases, but I take cases that that I think are gonna gonna work.
How many cases on average do you do a year, just in general?
For jiu-jitsu,
No, just generally. I mean, also for
generally
jujitsu, I
speaking,
guess, but yeah, I mean,
I mean, if we're talking about the regular part of my practice,
yeah.
um, honestly, that I don't keep count, but there's so many people applying for citizenship, especially now because they're afraid of that, like right now that they're going to change the test, so the test is changing, and also people applying for their green cards because they may have been out of status for so long, but now they're married to their U.S. citizen spouses. So, again, even with that, I mean, we don't. I'm not like we're a small firm. We do have a heavy caseload, but I don't take too many cases where I lose control. I don't want to get to the point where we get too big where we lose control of our clients. Like in our office, like we know all of our clients' names. Like we know everybody pretty intimately. I don't want to get to the point where my assistant mentions some name and I don't know who she's talking about. Then it got too big. And I don't want to get to a point where and I know it might sound stupid, but I don't want to get to a point where I have so many associates where, um, again, I don't know the clients. Like I like to help my clients. So I need to know, even if I'm not working directly on their cases, I need to still know what's going on with their case. I need to still oversee the direction of the case, even if I'm not the one actually doing the case.
I don't think that sounds stupid at all. In fact, I
You
think
know?
that's kind of a noble endeavor to like care so much about the work and the people that you want to be able to know who you're talking about. I don't
hmm
think that's stupid at all.
So, I mean, as far as the numbers, I honestly don't know the number.
It's okay. It was
I
just
don't
a
know.
curiosity question.
Yeah, I haven't really kept count. But I know I'm busy enough that I'm busy enough where I'm busy enough, and
Yeah.
I'm happy with that. You know.
How did you get into being like what part of immigration law appealed to you? Like, how did you get into being a lawyer for that
Well,
matter?
when I my father and my mother always wanted me to be an attorney. My father especially because he would always encourage me to like if you have a law degree, there's so many things that you can do. And then this is the same thing I tell my son now. Like when you have a law degree, you have the flexibility to go into to whatever profession you want because knowledge of the law is not going to go to waste. You can apply it in any number of different sectors. But also being an attorney, you have the ability to hang out your own shingle and just be your own boss. So that part kind of appealed to me, um, especially as I grew older because I I guess I'm ashamed to say this, but I have a problem with authority. I have a hard time working for other people. Um,
Why are you
I
ashamed to
mean,
say that?
I don't know. I do work for other people because I work for my clients, but
Yeah,
I have a hard
exactly.
time. I have a hard time. Um, I have a hard time working in like a traditional setting where I have a boss, things like that. That's just not me. So that I appreciate that part of being an attorney where you have a law degree and I was able to open up my own firm when I passed the bar. I only worked for a firm for like a couple days and I realized like this wasn't for me and I quit after like 1 week and I just opened up my own firm. So I started off in my apartment, um, working out of my own apartment, and then my wife joined me later on, like 1 year later. And then we were still working out of our apartment. Then we got to a point where we were able to get like a one room office, just a one room in a building. And then things just progressed from there. So we grew slowly, but now we're at a point where, we have two paralegals. I have an assistant. And again, I don't want to get too big. We're at a point now where, um, I feel like we're an established law firm now. Definitely.
That's fantastic. Like it almost sounds like you're like holding back about being proud. I think that's awesome. You built the business from nothing. You started out in your apartment. You got to multiple people on your staff, and you take the cases that you want to take, and you know all of the people. Like, that is, for most people, that is a dream scenario of their professional life, and you get to do it in your passion. I mean, not entirely, of course. Like, you're not doing 100% visas
Yes,
for jujitsu folks, but you're doing
correct.
that.
Yes,
Like, I feel like you've kind of made it, man. Like, I don't know why you're so
I
you're trying to
appreciate
be
it. Thank
like,
you.
unless I'm reading this wrong.
No, because I don't want to. The Bible that talks about like you don't have what God didn't give you, right? You can't take. I mean, of course, I am proud of what I've accomplished, but a lot of it was, a lot of the stuff that happened to me in my life is just beyond. I've been blessed. I've been blessed with my wife. I've been blessed with like a great partner. I've been blessed with the people that I work with. Um, so a lot of these things they're blessings. I can't take credit for a lot of these things, Um, but
I
but
do
yeah, I
understand that
mean,
that's a bit of a disconnect with religion sometimes, is that religion says, you don't take credit for it, but
yeah,
you are the one who put that work in, who you went to law school, you went, and you're the one who put in all the work in jujitsu, and you're the one who, people seek out to help them get into the country. And
no,
I think
thank
that's a
you,
wonderful thing.
thank you. But the thing was that when I was working for that firm, when I was waiting to hear from the bar, he, they would just throw me into things and not they weren't teaching me anything. So I said to myself, well, if I'm going to learn this stuff, I might as well just work for myself because they weren't teaching me. So when I first started out, I was doing a lot of criminal law. Actually, I was doing like municipal court and criminal law, which I like too. Um, my wife was doing immigration, and then when she joined me, we started getting more immigration cases, and I you know I so I slowly started transitioning from criminal law to immigration law, and right now, like, I wouldn't practice any area of law other than immigration. That's what I love because you it's not necessarily the most lucrative area right now, and right now it's very stressful. It's very
Can't even
stressful.
begin to imagine.
Every week there's like new changes, and it's very stressful. This is one area of law where you are able to deal directly with other people, and then you can see, the results of your work. Like if you help somebody to become a citizen, or you help somebody to get their green card to stay here, like you've changed their life. Um, so it's very gratifying. It's very gratifying being able to have that human connection. um, and unlike criminal law, the people, like a lot of people, they're grateful. They appreciate how you've helped them. Versus criminal law, you could do your very best and you could get them like a great deal, but they always badmouth the attorney. No, never appreciative. No one, they don't want to ever take responsibility for how they got into that situation, or that they might also be culpable. They never are grateful to the attorney. But my immigration clients, they're all very appreciative.
And I imagine that those are probably relationships that, even though if you don't hear from them regularly, like, those are people who, you know, at any point will just reach out and be like, "Hey, Paris, I was just thinking about how grateful I
But
am."
yeah, because they all, my clients, a lot of my business is referrals.
Yeah.
So even if I didn't advertise, I would still have business coming in just through referrals. And I still now, like, I have people coming in. Um, they'll come in with my old client, maybe from like 20 years ago. My old client will bring another person in, and make sure that they actually bring them into the office to make sure that their friend meets with me. And then, this is a client from like 20 years ago. So yeah, that they don't. A lot of these people, they don't forget who helped them, and that I appreciate that.
That has to be so fulfilling, like, you must have, like, such pride in that moment when you see somebody from, like, 20 years ago walk through the door with somebody
Yes,
new.
yeah, yes, yeah. It's. I mean, yeah, you can't help but hug them when they come in, and you feel like you're old friends because for them, like if they've gotten to a certain point, if they're a citizen or something, you kind of went through the journey with them. So just in the same way, like with jujitsu, like when you come up through the ranks with your friends and you know you've achieved a certain rank together, like you went through something together. It's kind of like the same thing. So that even if you don't talk to that person for a number of years, like you don't forget that bond because it was forged through this trial.
That's really beautiful. Like the way you think about it is, I tell you, as somebody who, like professionally, I've worked with a lot of lawyers over the years, whether it's getting people their H-1Bs, whether that's contract law, employment law. Um, my overall experience of lawyers is, yeah, I like my job. I like being good at it. My experience of you so far is I like helping people. And I feel like that is not the most common way that people view lawyers.
Well, because I try to be the lawyer for like, when I need help from somebody else. So hard to find good people. Like whether you need like a good doctor or a good accountant. Like I'm looking for somebody who's actually going to take the time and explain things to me and not brush me off and actually care about my case and devote time to it. That's what I'm looking for, but it's very hard to find. But I want to be that person for someone in my situation when it comes to law. So that's what I try to be to that person. So I always take my time. Like I always tell my son, like if you want to make money, you don't have to be a lawyer. There's different things you could do. There's much easier ways to make money, but um, if you go into a certain area of law, it's because you should really want to go into that area of law because you care about that area of law. Um, I don't know what I'm saying actually, but I'm like I do care about my clients because like they're entrusting their case to me. Whether it's an athlete, whether it's somebody applying for citizenship, whether it's somebody trying to bring their wife over here, like you have a responsibility because they're placing their trust in you. So it's very, I mean, of course, yeah, I just, I have my own life too. I have my job, and I have to, of course, I have to separate what's personal from what's business. But they've entrusted you, like you have a certain responsibility, so you have to do your best to help them to achieve their their objective, what they're asking you to do. Of course, ethically, but you got to do your best. That's what they're paying their money to you. They're entrusting you. Like I don't want to abuse that.
But what I'm saying is I don't feel like that is as common as it should be. And I think that's
Absolutely.
really
Yeah.
wonderful that you have that view on life.
Thank you. Thank you.
So
Again,
wait,
I
I
only
want
do
to
that
ask
because
you one thing that you just
yeah.
said. Like you said,
Mhm.
you told your son you could go into anywhere, like you can go into any area. But you also didn't start out as in immigration. Like, did you not realize that were you unsure of what you wanted to do, or did you like kind of know that you wanted to help people, and then you started out in criminal law and found out that wasn't for you? Like, how did you make that switch uh, on a more mental level?
From criminal law to I mean,
Immigration.
when I was in law school, I always wanted to be like a trial attorney because you always watch like all these shows. Like in my time is LA Law and then The Practice, and those shows are great, So they glamorize trial work. But then when I started working for myself and had my own firm, you realize that you can't run your own business and keep track of everything and do all the administrative work and still have time to go to trial because it requires an extraordinary amount of time and focus if you're actually going to trial and everything else is going to fall by the wayside. Then you start realizing, no, those people, they're going to trial because either they work for the state or they work for a big firm. So they have other people who are doing the administrative side. Um, that kind of brought me to reality a little bit. And then when I was doing criminal work, I was doing a lot of driving around to all these different municipal courts. But right now, everything is by Zoom, but back then you had to drive to each individual court. And there's like 500 courts in New Jersey. And when I was first starting out, I had no business. I had to drive. I had to take whatever kids I could. I had to drive all over the place, from Warren County, Sussex County, like 2 hours away. Like I would drive all over the place. And again, it got to a point where it was very hard to always be out, but also take care of your business so that things don't fall by the wayside, your accounting and everything. Um, with immigration, it's something where you don't. Immigration's great because you can choose what you want to go into. If you want to do trial work, you could do trial work. If you want to stay in the office and do forms and assist people with forms or do like petitions, you can stay in the office and do it. You have more flexibility. You could do business immigration, you could do family immigration, you could do asylum work. There's so many fields of immigration that you could go into. So that appealed to me. Um, and again, with immigration, you're able to deal directly with people. So I have that right mix where I can take care of all the administrative stuff of actually running a business, but also deal with people,
Yeah. How do
which
you
I
handle
can't,
like how do you handle like that vulnerability? Like I guess the best way I could explain it is um when somebody goes through that immigration process, they're vulnerable. They're like, look, this is what I need to progress my life. Like, please help. Like, how do you deal with that um heaviness, so to speak?
empathize, but I try not to, I have to remind myself that I have to also remember my role as the attorney too. Because I don't want to get to the point where I'm in the same boat as them. I'm just worrying it, and then I'm the one who actually have to I'm the one I'm supposed to come up with a solution too. So I have to empathize, but also put my attorney hat on to figure out how to help them. But it's tough because I have to be sometimes I have to be brutally honest with them too, because sometimes there is no case. Sometimes there's nothing that I can do. And I have to be able to tell them that, with compassion, but um it's better that I tell them rather than they go to a notario or some unscrupulous attorney who's gonna rip them off. So a lot of cases I turn away because I can't do anything. Um I do a lot of consultations where just not I can't do anything for people, and I just have to tell them the truth.
When you say you can't do anything, like what does that mean? Like they come with a, hey, this like you're asking for something that's the law doesn't allow, or you've already passed a time limit or like statutory time
Hmm.
limit. Like what does that mean?
Yeah, like so. For example, um, they have something called the permanent bar in immigration, where let's say that you've been here illegally for a long period of time, and then the person leaves the United States, and then they sneak back in. Maybe they did this when they were younger, but now they've been settled here. They're living here for 15, 20 years. They have family here, like firmly settled. But maybe when they were young, when they didn't have all these things to worry about, they didn't know any better. They may have done this where they, crossed over from Mexico, stayed here for a year or two, left, and then snuck back in. So when you stayed here for 1 year or more illegally, and then you leave and you sneak back in, then you trigger what's called the permanent bar. So if you have a permanent bar, then you are permanently ineligible to apply for a green card. So let's say even if you're married to a U.S. citizen, even if you have kids here, um, if they file for you, your case is going to be denied because you're permanently ineligible because you triggered that permanent bar when you snuck back in.
And so you've had people
So,
come to you with that, and you're like, look,
and there's a
there's
lot of
nothing I
people,
can do.
yeah, there's nothing like, they, at least for me, I mean, there might, yeah, it's very hard. There's practically nothing that could be done when you have a permanent bar, especially now. Like if you try to do something and you have a permanent bar, or let's say you have a deportation order from an outstanding deportation order. If you try to do something now in this environment, you're going to get picked up.
Yeah,
You know,
I can
so
understand.
and sometimes there's just nothing that I can do. But people have these different ideas, or they heard this, they heard that. So sometimes I have to just sit down with them and disabuse them of those wrong notions.
Yeah, that must be a tough situation to
And
be in. Like,
it's hard because you feel like because they're paying money, and then they come in with all these hopes and expectations. I heard about you, you helped this person, and I read the reviews. So they're coming to you with all this hope, and sometimes you have to let them down gently. That I'm not a miracle worker. There's only so much that I could do within the walls. It's tough.
Wow, that is an intense responsibility.
Especially now because of the climate and everything, because enforcement is so high, um, people are scared now. People are very scared. That's why it's very it's people think, oh, you must be very busy because you're doing immigration, but no, it's not. It's not. That's not the reality. It's actually, I mean, I'm busy, but not necessarily like I'm busy like making money hand over fist. I'm busy meeting with people and telling them I can't do anything for them.
That's got to be even
Yeah.
harder.
So it's a stressful busy because people are scared, so they need to try to find information, trying to do something for maybe 40% of cases. There's nothing that can be done.
I would that is a difficult position to be in. I do not envy you being in that position at all.
Yeah. I think most people they listen and they understand and they're appreciative. Other people, I get the sense that they probably think, well, maybe he doesn't know what he's talking about because they're just in denial. But my conscience is clear.
Yeah, you can look yourself in the mirror and say, "Look, I gave them the
Yeah,
best advice I can. I did the
exactly.
whatever diligence and here's the
Yes,
best information I can give."
yes. And then sometimes I have people when I tell them these things, they don't believe me. They actually go to somebody else, and then that person messes up their case, or it ends up blowing up and it gets worse. And then they come back to me. At least they have the her humility to come back to me. But by then, sometimes the damage is already done.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see how that would be difficult. But you get to see a lot of people in like a lot of different situations. Was there any kind of piece of advice that you would give folks just generally from all of this, martial arts and uh, immigration and legal and just life learning?
Huh. Well, some people, they get very discouraged by their circumstances. I'm very discouraged. Like a lot of people, I feel like some people they get to the point. I don't know if they're really super suicidal, but I just feel like some people they get so discouraged by some of their circumstances that they're on the road to that. Like they're on the road to major depression. So I guess, and I'm sure. I mean, we've all kind of been on that road. So I would tell people to just take things day by day. Um, and again, this is where like for me, like this is where my faith comes in because my faith powers me to get through some of these circumstances, through these adversities. If it didn't have God in my life, like I feel like I also would be very discouraged. But because I have God and because I know my salvation, and I know that uh, God works all things out for my good. I trust. So I just go through the process, and I try to tell that to other people as well. You know, to to have faith and not to give up. And I mean, I know it sounds kind of um, hackneyed, but these things are very true, right? You have to take things day by day. You can't blow things out of proportion. You just got to take things day by day, one step at a time. You got to find you got to find the right people to help you, and then you have to find the right people to help you, and you have to be humble enough to listen to their instruction, and of course you got to trust God. So you need faith, but you have to have some wisdom too. Like if God moves somebody to help, throw somebody your way to help you, you have to be able to discern that, to recognize that, and listen to that person.
It's funny. Like, I'm not a religious person. I don't have anything against religious people as long as they're not trying to convert me.
Yes.
But one of the things that I think is interesting is the way I define luck is when opportunity meets preparedness.
Mhm.
And it's interesting to me to hear the way that you talk about kind of being aware of a situation. And it sounds like it's almost like your definition is Be ready when something presents itself, be able to identify it and, act on it. Like have faith that that will help you.
Yeah, you have to be. I think you have to have a realistic assessment of things. So that um, you have to have a realistic assessment. You have to be able to discern what's good for you, what's not good for you, and then, but also sometimes when the opportunity is there, yeah, you have to be ready when it's there. Like some people, for example, when there's certain programs, like for example, even just going back to immigration for citizenship, they're going to change the test. It's going to get substantially harder um, after October 20th. But if you apply right now, you're going to be able to take the easier test, the current test right now. But if you have to, for some people, if they have to take the harder test, and with the new standards, it's going to be so much harder to become a citizen. So, you have to know, okay, this now is the time, the window in which to apply. Otherwise, it's going to get harder.
That making the test harder, by the way, I think is such a funny thing to do. Like I get why they're doing it, like, hey, make it
Yes.
difficult at every step. But
Hmm.
I also find it fascinating because the average American cannot pass that citizenship test.
Yes,
Like they
of
there's
course.
the average American has not taken civics, doesn't understand the structure of government or the history well enough, and wouldn't be able to pass the test. And yet
Yes.
they're going to make it even harder.
It's so true. Yeah. Like right now, it's 100 questions. But yeah, even if you look at the current test right now, like Um, I'm sure a lot of people would fail. You know? But that the new test, the new test is 128 questions, and those questions are substantially harder. And they have new requirements, like they have a background check. They have neighborhood investigations where they're going to start snooping around, asking your neighbors, "Hey, is this a good person?" You got to prove good moral character. But then, then it becomes like, well, what's the character of the person that's judging me?
Yeah,
It's so subjective. So
it
all
is
these things are
infuriating.
coming in, all these things are coming into play um in the next couple of months and the next couple of weeks. So um for some people it's more advantageous to apply now before things get worse. So sometimes you
Yeah.
have to go through it.
Just do it. It's funny, like I took maybe 10 or 12 years ago, I forget, a couple of my friends, one of my friends found a sample citizenship test, and there was like
Mhm.
6 or 7 of us that sat around and tried it. And there was only like 3 of us that got enough to pass. I mean, fortunately,
Mhm.
I was one of them, and I think I only passed with like 2 questions over the minimum necessary. But I was like
Yes, yeah.
embarrassed. I sat down afterwards and I did a bunch of reading and I figured out all the questions I got wrong and studied a bit
Yes.
of civics. And I was like genuinely personally embarrassed that I couldn't pass the citizenship, but that I
Right,
could
right,
barely
right.
pass the citizenship test.
Hmm. But when I see, sometimes, like when I see our clients, they cry too. Like when they become citizens, they cry. It's almost like they got their black belts, because they went through so much too.
And it takes probably close to the same amount of time. It's 10
You know,
plus years
yeah.
often.
Well, it's you have to have your green card for 5 years before you're eligible to apply. But in order for you to get your green card, yeah, that process might take anywhere from 5 to 10 years just to get your green card.
Yeah.
So in a way, yes, it does parallel the black belt journey.
Yeah. And it's
In
something
a
you
way, it
really got
does.
to know right from the beginning that you want to do if you're going to
Yes,
stick it out for
yes,
that period of time.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. And you have to be, you can't do certain things. Like, you have to, I mean, you should be staying out of trouble anyway, but there are certain choices that you make when you have your green card. Like, you have to be aware of your choices because if you make certain wrong decisions, um, that can have an impact on your ability to become a citizen.
Yeah. Yeah. It makes sense. Yeah, I do think about that as like living as somebody who's an immigrant in Germany. Like I think about that. Sometimes people are like, "Hey, let's go to this protest," and I'm like, "Well, that protest is going to have a lot of police there," and they're
Yes,
like, "Yeah, yeah, but that's okay. You'll just get hit a few times." And I'm like, "I don't mind getting hit. I mind getting dragged in, and then my ability to stay in the country question because
yes,
I'm like, and it makes me feel bad often because I'm like, hey, I want to go participate in this thing, but it's like it's not a smart move if I want to be able to stay in the country, uh,
yes.
kind of a situation.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's the same thing when we tell our son, right? There's, now you're in college, but just we can't make all your decisions for you. We're not living with you. You're living on your own now. But you have to, you have to have the wisdom to make certain decisions. You have to know when, maybe it's not a good idea to go to this place at this time. Because if you mess up, it might affect your future.
Yeah. What are you excited for in the future? What are you looking forward to these days?
Well, I'm excited. Little. Well, I'm very excited. I'm opening up the school with my professor. Yeah,
Nice.
so we just my professor Rolles Gracie, we just signed the lease, so we're going to be opening up a school close to me, next to my office, very close to my office. So I'm very excited about that. Uh, it's like learning everything all over again. Like I started my business like almost 30 years ago, but now I'm starting a new business and going through everything all over again. So it's a very exciting, exhilarating, and scary process all at the same time.
Is there anything that you're particularly nervous about with regard to this?
Um, well, I mean, it's just starting a new enterprise, and I wanted to obviously you don't start something to fail, so
Yeah.
we want to start it, and I want to we want to grow it and get a healthy student body. But whatever fears I have, I think my vision just keeps overpowering the fear, because I really want to help uh bring jujitsu to where in my town, in Edison. I want to bring jujitsu to that town, but I also, more importantly, I want to create like the right environment, um, where we really pass down like the art of jujitsu. It's because you could go into sports, the competitive aspect, but I really want to focus more on the art. Like I want people from all walks of life to come into a clean, safe environment, um, where they can learn the art and get exercise, but have fun, develop camaraderie, to challenge themselves. And um, I think because I've learned from so many good uh, people in the art, I can help to make that process easier for them.
When you say that you want to create the right kind of culture, what is the things that are important to you culture-wise that you want the school to kind of have, embody, and you want the students to understand when they walk through the door onto?
Well, we don't want to have an environment where it's too clicky and where people feel like, oh, these are the competitors and they have like a higher status than anybody else. Because jujitsu is for everybody. It's meant to empower everybody. Everybody can benefit from it. So whether you're a kid, whether you're a middle-aged person, and you have your regular job, like this is something that you want to. Like I said, everybody needs something for themselves. Like this is something that you want to, when you're working your job, like you want to be looking forward to going to jujitsu after class, after work, to get your exercise and meet with your friends and feel good about yourself. Like you need that something for yourself, but you want to come to an environment where you're not afraid of getting hurt. You're not afraid, and you don't feel like you're being treated like second class because you don't compete. Like you want to come to an environment where your friends are, and you're gonna learn different things, and also like challenge yourself and get your exercise and go home without getting hurt, and come back the next day.
That's a
If
wonderful
that makes
vision.
any sense.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a beautiful vision, right? Like the main reason I asked is because everybody sort of has this vision of what their school should be like whether it's the one they train at or the one they're about to open or whatever. Um, and the version of that is important to the head instructor or the sort of heads of the school, that's usually the culture that the mat embodies. And so being able to like very clearly espouse what you want out of that culture, I think helps it materialize. And so that's why I was curious, like, what do you want for your students? I think you answered it very, very elegantly. I just wanted to hear what your version of hey, this is what I want a school to be.
I
is.
want them to learn jujitsu, right? So I want them to
Yeah.
learn like the Gracie jujitsu from the first family, right? So we want to be able to show like the techniques and the way that the certain techniques are taught, that were taught to me by my professor, right? So we want to show like the Gracie way of jujitsu. I want people to learn some aspects of self-defense, so that they have that confidence. If they do get into a fight or altercation, they could defend themselves. I want kids to learn, um, to, of course to learn jujitsu, but also to learn other things like character from jujitsu, right? Um, Discipline, things like that. And then I want I want to be, because I have the privilege of learning from so many people, and training from with all the literally the best people in the world. I want to be able to show like the championship techniques that work at the highest level for people who are not necessarily athletes. Like you don't have to be an athlete to do their techniques, but you need somebody who's going to be able to break it down for you and explain it to you. And you should be able to ask questions about it without feeling like ashamed or intimidated. I want to create that environment where like a lab, like I want to show you like this is the techniques that certain people are using. I want to be able to for you to understand it. I want you to be able to ask about it if you don't understand something without feeling that you're too scared to ask the professor. But I don't want, but I want to teach like the highest level of jujitsu, but kind of like I don't, it's hard to explain in a different environment where like
I
a
don't think
calm
that's a
environment, patient environment.
I don't think that's a I think you did an excellent job explaining it. I mean, it sounds like a place I'd love to train as well. So
Like but like we want to show like the art, like the fundamentals, the art, like the true essence of the art, but we also want to show the modern technique as well. So you're getting both. You're getting like the traditional side, like the important side, the art, the fundamentals that you could be applied anywhere at the highest levels, like with how Drew does, right? But we also want you to be also want you to get exposed to like the latest metas, the latest techniques as well. So you're conversant in everything. You should be able to know leg locks as well. Like I'm not going to be afraid to teach leg locks. Like they could be taught safely if you have the right teacher, you have the right environment. You can learn leg locks too.
at white belt, I completely agree with that
Yeah.
sentiment. Yeah.
Right. But you don't want to go in and be afraid of getting hurt, and then you can't go to work the next day because you got to worry about having to get surgery on your ACL. So,
For sure. Uh, Paris, this was I wish you all the luck with your new studio. And next time I am in New Jersey, hopefully it'll be open and I'll be able to come down and visit.
yes,
Uh,
thank you. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be the Rolles Gracie Academy in Edison. Yeah, but
okay,
definitely
cool.
when you come to Jersey, I mean, definitely love to have you by. Yes.
I will definitely do that. So if somebody wants to get in touch with you, BJJ Visa Lawyer on Instagram or
Yes.
njimmigrationattorney.com on the web.
Yes. Yes. I'm on the NJ www.njimmigrationattorney.com. I'm on LinkedIn, or if you have an immigration inquiry involving jujitsu, just reach me directly through the Instagram. Yes.
Awesome. Thanks so much for your time today, Paris. This was a wonderful
Thank you, Eric.
conversation.
It was a pleasure. Thank you so much for the honor. I appreciate it.
Thank you for listening. If you have any specific questions about immigration to the U.S., feel free to reach out to Paris directly on Instagram or his website. If you find yourself near Edison, New Jersey, USA, drop in at his new school, Rolles Gracie Edison. You can find his contact information, Instagram, and websites in the show notes. And as always, thank you for your time and attention.